Everything blew up in seconds. The man fans knew as Wayne, cool, collected, always smiling, sat cuffed in the back of a squad car, blue lights flashing across a face suddenly strange and unreadable. Breaking news headlines hit harder than any plot twist, naming him at the center of a secret gambling ring that stretched deep under the surface of everything 90-Day Fiancé fans thought was real. For months, the story of Wayne and Kimberly looked like one of the franchise's rare happy endings, a cross-Atlantic leap from mess to magic, from heartbreak to a quiet new beginning. Instead, it crashed harder than anyone imagined, blowing open the private back channels between reality, reputation, and the law. Would anyone have guessed this gentle Englishman, with his patient smile, his afternoon teas, his let's work it out vibe, would end up facing police in a lockdown sting on British soil? Did Kimberly ever sense the truth, or was all the love filtered through lies from day one? No one's coping well tonight. You probably felt it, the group chats buzzing, Insta stories blowing up with speculation, people literally arguing about who saw it coming and who's still in shock. Maybe you watched Kimberly's last post and caught that flicker in her eyes. She looked done, yes, but not like this kind of done. There's world-weary, and then there's soul-tired, and tonight, those lines blur. Suddenly, all the cracks in their story seem obvious. The vanishing calls, the crossed wires, the cold silences that felt less like distance and more like a wall being built, stone by stone, out of secrets. The romantic snapshots from London feel like pictures from another life. Now it's headlines and mugshots, whispers of hidden millions, and the kind of hurt that sucks the air from a room. Kimberly didn't stick around for the cleanup. She slammed the door, hard, permanent, without second thoughts. She didn't post cryptic quotes or drop teary explanations. She just disappeared, pulled every plug, made sure her name had nothing to do with whatever legal disaster was circling Wayne's world. Fans watched, some heartbroken, others vindicated, but nobody bored. When does love stop being worth it? Who decides when enough is enough, especially after you've spent half your heart trying to fix someone only to find out they broke the rules all along? The real question, did anyone ever really know Wayne, or was everyone, including Kimberly, falling in love with a fantasy built to collapse? Last time anyone saw Wayne and Kimberly together, the energy was tentative, kind of sweet, kind of awkward, like two teenagers pretending they weren't living under the scrutiny of a million opinions. Kimberly had landed in London all nerves and hope, suitcases packed with expectations heavier than any carry-on the airlines would allow. Wayne met her at arrivals with a cautious grin and a cup of tea, doing the whole British gentleman routine that had fans and aunties swooning, at least for a few weeks. Across social media, people were rooting for her, not just because everyone loves a good comeback, but because she seemed real, scraped up but still stubborn, proud of her wild heart, and a little reckless about it too. Viewers were still whispering about the Usman saga, the gifts, the drama, the body shaming, all of it. But maybe this British chapter could be different. Maybe. Nobody predicted the plotline would jump from side-eye texting complaints to million-dollar crime allegations. Before anyone says, I knew it, can we talk about how Wayne's IG looked cleaner than his kitchen counter? He posted polite food pics, goofy tourist snaps, like an older, slightly confused Harry Styles who never updated his playlist past Coldplay. Kimberly, on the flip side, was busy healing out loud, sharing wellness updates and new smiles, the kind that only come after you've been through some things and learned to start picking yourself first for once. People still DM'd her, warning about red flags or telling her to trust her gut. She ignored most of it, focusing on self-care, posting cryptic but upbeat captions, almost allergic to drama, publicly anyway. Between episodes, Wayne barely showed up online except for those weirdly formal shoutouts to loyal fans that read like ChatGPT wrote them. Kimberly kept it classy, posting about her new job, her mom life with Jamal, hints of finding her feet again in California. Fans noticed she left those Wayne K comments hanging for days without response. Comment sections always have their detectives. One person clocked the time zone gap. Another claimed Wayne was active on WhatsApp during her birthday, but never messaged her. Somebody else swore they saw him tagged at a casino in Brighton, but the photo was cropped and blurry, probably from 2013. Even with thousands of miles and a digital ocean between them by the last episode, there were still bright spots in public. Kimberly posted about London, the trains, those cozy dinners with Wayne looking dependable and soft-spoken. Every now and then, she'd answer a fan, spinning it all as long-distance woes, like the universe was always on airplane mode. Wayne never posted about her, but if you believed his stories, they were navigating challenges with respect. Sure, buddy. The only challenge most viewers saw was whether Kimberly would ever let another man use her as emotional air freshener. And then the vibes shifted. Friends in the comments noticed Kimberly wasn't liking Wayne's photos anymore. She uploaded more solo spa days and less of the melancholy playlist posts. Wayne mentioned his business commitments in the UK about 5 too many times for anyone's comfort. You don't need to be Sherlock to know when someone's hiding out behind work, especially a guy who gives LinkedIn answers for questions nobody asked. Audiences caught on. People started placing bets in DMs, joking about when Wayne would ghost or when Kimberly would have her next self-love era glow-up. There's always one person in every watch party who claims they saw it coming, right? But while everyone else was trading memes and sipping tea over their chaos, Kimberly was quietly restructuring her boundaries. Fewer couple updates. More focus on home, on healing, on family roots, holding it all together in public while the private conversations got harder, shorter, more defensive. Fans could feel the temperature dropping, even before the headlines. No matter how hard everyone rooted for romance to win, sometimes you can't Photoshop the problems out of the picture. And as the world was about to find out, nothing looked the same once the arrests hit the news. Kimberly woke up one morning not to the sound of a good morning text, but to a wall of notifications that made her stomach drop. At first, it was silence. Silence from Wayne, silence in the group chat, an uneasy quiet that anyone with relationship PTSD recognizes way too quickly. The distance wasn't just measured in miles, but in missed calls, unanswered messages, and those subtle, slow fades that only hurt more when you remember how much you tried to believe. Every day, Kimberly scrolled through her own messages, seeing weeks where a conversation once flowed as easily as a London river now dried up into awkward, shallow replies. Fans talked about growing apart like it was normal, but nothing about this situation felt normal. Especially not the moment she found out people in Wayne's circle were deleting old Instagram posts and locking down their pages. Remember how in the first few weeks, they couldn't go an hour without trading memes and inside jokes? That energy disappeared. Wayne's replies dropped from paragraphs to 2-word answers, and then nothing. No thinking of you.
No sweet nothings.
It was as if he'd put his entire personality on Do Not Disturb. If you've ever seen someone keep their WhatsApp last seen visible while pretending not to have time, you already know how petty these games get. Kimberly could feel it happening. The slow, choking feeling when doubts start to invade every calm night, turning her pillows into interrogation chairs. Wayne, once reliable, became a riddle wrapped in obvious avoidance. His work was suddenly confidential. His mood, strictly tired. Suddenly, there were just enough plausible excuses to keep Kimberly dangling, but too few real answers to build any trust. Layer that on top of internet whispers catching fire about Wayne's business partners being involved in suspect activities, and things got dark fast. Kimberly did what any of us would do. She started double-checking things she used to believe without question. Her intuition pinged every time she found him tagged at odd places, unknown clubs, sketchy charity events that seemed to close overnight, friends with private profiles who left vague comments under his photos. It wasn't panic yet. It was that quiet, bone-deep suspicion that every strong person feels right before the ground gives way. These weren't wild accusations out of nowhere. This was a series of small red flags collecting like traffic tickets until the fines come due. The real tipping point? Late-night calls started going straight to voicemail, even when she knew he was online. He'd say it was bad Wi-Fi or late meetings. But how many times can you believe that before you start arranging your next therapy appointment in advance? Every time she pressed for answers, gently at first, then with all the firmness of someone tired of feeling stupid, the conversations spiraled into arguments. One wrong question and Wayne would become defensive, asking why she couldn't trust what they had. Trust is only good until you realize you're the only one trying. Meanwhile, Wayne's explanations started making less sense by the week, and not even his British accent could smooth over how sketchy the story was becoming. Let's not forget, all this stress landed squarely on top of a long history of Kimberly sacrificing her peace to keep up appearances. Kimberly, who once bent over backwards in Nigeria, who learned painfully and in front of all of TLC's cameras not to buy love with tech gifts or ignore her own boundaries just to keep a man happy. This time, she was less forgiving. She saw the signs, the shifting stories, the sudden disappearances, the way Wayne could ignore her all day and then show up on his podcast giving relationship advice to strangers. If you're cringing, so was she. The day news broke in the UK tabloids, Kimberly didn't just lose a boyfriend. She lost the story she'd been telling herself. There's heartbreak, and then there's humiliation. Getting blindsided isn't new for her, but realizing the person you thought was your safe place is now trending for all the worst reasons brings a different kind of pain. That's when she cut contact. No cryptic subtweets, no calls. No need to air it out online. She had seen this movie before, and she was done being cast as the naive girlfriend who sticks around to see the best in people, while the worst plays out across 2 continents. Every viewer who stuck with Kimberly through this saga had opinions. The group chats exploded. Half the fans were heartbroken, arguing that long-distance relationships can work if both people are honest. Others were practically cheering, convinced they spotted Wayne's sketchy energy episodes ago. Some people pulled up Instagram receipts, screen recordings since deleted lives, comment threads that aged like spoiled milk. And yes, more than a few DM'd her, saying she deserved better. Because she did. But this is where it gets even messier. As news of Wayne's arrest circled, questions cropped up like weeds. Did Kimberly ever suspect the depth of Wayne's double life? Was she protecting herself or cleaning up her brand by leaving so quickly? And what happens when a breakup isn't just a breakup, but a full-on rescue mission to save your own reputation? If you thought this was peak drama, the next layer still hadn't peeled back yet, and you could feel everyone bracing for the next piece of bad news. Right now, Kimberly was fighting not just for closure, but for something closer to freedom. Within hours of Wayne's mugshot hitting the tabloids, social media exploded. Twitter threads became digital war zones, with fans fighting over loyalty, ice-cold takes, and wild conspiracy theories flying in every direction. It wasn't long before Wayne trended right next to screenshots of teary-eyed Kimberly from last season, side by side with the word resilient spelled in 100 different meme fonts. Some commented that Kimberly, queen of comebacks, deserved her own medal for tolerance. Others weren't ready to let her off the hook. Would you keep ignoring red flags if you'd survived heartbreak on international television twice? Is it called bravery to trust again? Or is it the definition of a slow emotional car crash? Instagram stories got crowded as fans dropped side-by-sides of Wayne's latest apology video and his super old self-help podcast soundbites, adding clown emojis and popcorn reactions. Everybody suddenly became an expert in long-distance love, international law, and for some reason, cyber forensics. A viral post listed all the times Wayne dodged Kimberly's questions with weird platitudes about seasons of change. Someone else claimed to have DMs proving he was working late at all hours while also liking casino influencer posts at 3 a.m. Then came the screen recordings of Kimberly quietly unfollowing Wayne on everything. By the time Reddit started a poll titled, "Was Kimberly played?" or "Did she finally play the game?" it was clear nobody was just watching the show anymore. Everyone felt like part of it. Watching the audience flip between sympathy and shade made for its own sport. One popular comment said, "If loving someone means ignoring their LinkedIn updates and police reports, I'm good. Thanks." People posted bingo cards for red flags, updating them every time Wayne's story changed, or Kimberly posted an inspirational quote featuring a lion or a phoenix. All of this drama played out while Wayne's small group of defenders insisted none of the accusations had been proven and everyone was innocent until proven guilty. Others rolled their eyes, joking that the only thing Wayne was innocent of was being interesting in his own podcast. There was no escaping the split. Fans became digital detectives, piecing together timelines from posts, tagging friends every time a new rumor broke. The group chats went wild. Was Kimberly being strategic or authentic in cutting ties? Was she keeping secrets of her own? Some argued she ran away too fast. Should she have stood by him? Or is it smart to flee when the ship is already burning? An entire TikTok duet chain started with people lip-syncing her last public breakup statement and layering their own "what I would have done" advice on top. Watching the swirl was exhausting, like diving into a river of hot takes and never reaching the shore. What made the moment so tense was that no one could agree. Would you stay if your partner got arrested, even if you had doubts for weeks? Is trust something you risk again after so much public pain, or do you learn to bolt at the first tremor? Kimberly's past added fuel. Fans who saw her give and give to Usman before watched these events with wary eyes, hoping she'd picked self-preservation this time. But it wasn't as simple as rooting for a strong woman moment. There was trauma behind every step, and the internet, for all its big feelings, could only guess what that kind of heartbreak feels like when a million strangers are watching. As the fan theories kept multiplying, so did the tension online. People tracked the accounts of anyone who'd ever commented under Wayne's posts, looking for alliances or new drama. Some claimed police would find a bigger scam hiding under the surface. Cue dozens more comment wars and another round of wild YouTube speculation videos. Even people with no stake in the franchise found themselves asking, where's the line? If your partner's secrets become your burden, who do you save, yourself or the relationship? What's the price of loyalty when all the facts have been filtered through layers of excuses and bad choices? The atmosphere was thick with questions, few easy answers, and everyone bracing for the next wave. As fans refreshed feeds looking for Kimberly's next move, the sense of suspense only grew sharper, making it nearly impossible to look away. After the chaos broke loose, everything else went quiet. Kimberly wasn't posting. There were no exes doing damage control, no frantic Instagram lives, no subtweets, no shade masquerading as self-love. Just silence. And if you know heartbreak, you know it's the quiet that hurts the most. It wasn't a calm quiet either. It was the aftershock of public betrayal, the kind where even breathing feels like walking through splinters. Her closest circle shielded her, but the pain was still unwanted company. This wasn't one of those times reality TV wraps the story with a makeover and a brunch with the girls. Kimberly had to put down the phone and face the kind of alone only real betrayal leaves behind. Scrolling through old messages, it all felt ridiculous in hindsight. Every inside joke replayed as evidence. Every overlooked white lie stuck out like it was in bold font, staring her down. That's the thing about trusting big. When it ends, it falls hard, and there are receipts you'll never untangle. Kimberly replayed conversations, wondering if she missed the signs or if she chose to see potential, because hope outweighs skepticism when you've poured yourself into someone for months. She wanted stability, not scandal. She wanted to choose right this time. In real life, healing doesn't come in clickbait snapshots. There were nights Kimberly sat alone in San Diego, missing the quiet Oxford evenings that felt like shelter. The soft part of her still hoped Wayne would turn out to be a misunderstood good guy. But every breaking story, every new police update, only dug the wound deeper. Trust, once stretched to the limit, doesn't snap back. It recoils and leaves a mark. Readers and fans talk up setting boundaries, but boundaries are lines you only learn to draw after you realize you're the only one investing anything genuine. Let's be honest, most people root for a dramatic glow-up at this stage, but for Kimberly, it was gritty and slow. It wasn't a revenge gym session or a power suit montage. It looked more like finally unfollowing Wayne, resisting the urge to check his last scene, and telling her therapist that she was done taking accountability for other people's mess. Some days she just made her bed and called that progress. She had to figure out how to live without the illusion of partnership, choosing quiet reality over noisy, pretty lies. What hits hardest for everyone watching is that, no matter how public her mess became, Kimberly never made herself the victim. She'd been humiliated, again, in front of the world. The memes were savage. People posted screenshots of Wayne launching a red flag podcast as if that was anything but a masterclass in irony. You can't help but laugh. Even hate watchers agreed. That was peak delusion. Wayne giving relationship advice? That's like asking for trust tips from a magician. Twitter had a field day. Next up, Wayne explains how not to get caught. Whatever else you say, the man has confidence. But for Kimberly, the path forward was raw. She put energy into the pieces of her life that didn't need anyone else's permission. She started sharing small wins again. A new work milestone, reconnecting with her son, taking up running, not for a glow-up, but to prove to herself that she could move forward on her own terms. Sometimes the only way out of public embarrassment is to get so busy living that you forget to Google yourself. She didn't erase her history. She wore it as armor. If you've ever been through heartbreak in private, imagine doing it in a digital stadium. Still, she kept showing up day after day, not for Wayne, not for a narrative, but for herself. There's a lesson there, buried under the mess of receipts and Reddit threads. Trust is valuable, but agency is priceless. Kimberly's journey wasn't about learning to spot red flags in other people. It was about noticing where she'd made herself so small for someone else's comfort. The one thing she didn't do? Love herself less, or let headlines decide her story. She didn't run a PR campaign. She went quiet, and in that quiet she got stronger. If you're watching this and nodding along, maybe you've left a Wayne behind or you've ignored your gut about someone one too many times. Remember how much strength it takes to stop chasing closure from someone who never respected you. Kimberly didn't find healing in dramatic speeches or in public forgiveness posts. The closure was in the no contact, the silence, the simple act of pulling her energy away from chaos. That's not glamorous, but it's real, it's honest, and that's why people relate. And if you think Wayne was done making it about himself, think again. After news of the arrest broke, he popped up with a dating podcast titled, "With No Trace of Self-Awareness, Spotting the Problems Early." Imagine the audacity. Fans roasted him so hard that even TikTok comedians got involved. People were duetting his tips for clear communication, with clips of him dodging every tough conversation on air. A Reddit user asked, "Is Wayne's real superpower his ability to ignore consequences, or is it the way he can turn getting arrested into brand content?" The podcast reviews now include more clowns than advice seekers. Still, it stings for Kimberly, no matter how much the internet laughs. Her biggest heartbreak wasn't Wayne's crime. It was realizing she could have kept believing in a version of him that never existed. All the late-night talks, the flights, the dreams were for a future that one person was never building. She had to burn her own hope down, brick by brick, and say goodbye to the fairy tale every fan thought she'd finally earned. If you've ever loved someone's potential, you know how that loss sits heavy in your chest. Yet out of that grief, something honest took root. No more trying to solve someone else's mysteries. No more draining herself in the name of being loyal to the wrong person. By leaving, Kimberly made the hardest move, not towards a new man or another plot twist, but toward the kind of self-worth nobody, not even reality TV, can measure. For everyone out there watching and thinking about their own boundaries, that might be the real plot twist. Learning to let go, not because you stopped loving, but because you started listening to yourself. What nobody expected is that, in this franchise built on drama, Kimberly's quiet exit would become the most relatable story of all. She didn't need a villain's arc or a perfect comeback. She needed honesty, and she found it not in Wayne, not in headlines, but in choosing her own story for the first time in a long time. So, if you're still waiting for her to fold, don't hold your breath. Sometimes the bravest move isn't fighting for someone else, but walking out the door and never looking back. When the cameras go dark and the audience starts scrolling for the next distraction, what's left behind isn't scandal. It's the weight in your chest after all the punching has stopped. That's where Kimberly found herself after Wayne's arrest. The reality is, no matter how many people were dissecting her choices online, she was the one piecing herself back together. This time there was no script, no director, no fake respite music swelling to tell her the worst was over. There was only her, a new quiet in her apartment, and the echo of every messy lesson she wished she'd learned sooner. Viewers saw headlines, but she saw receipts, each one a missed red flag, a compromise, an apology owed to herself. There's heartbreak, And then there's the hollow that comes when you realize you spent months loving someone who turned out to be a stranger when the mask fell. The fallout from trust broken so explosively doesn't heal on a schedule, and you could hear the internet holding its collective breath, waiting for some new blow-up in her DMs or a surprise post that might drop her truth. Instead, Kimberly left everything ambiguous, untagged, unanswered. This isn't a wound that closes up quick. Healing gets loud before it ever gets easy. And yet, there's a kind of hope that starts growing in all this loss, a stubborn faith that pain is proof you loved with everything you had. Friends sent flowers, but real comfort came from her son, her job, her mornings waking up to California light that didn't care about her follower count. Every self-help post says, trust the process, as if there's a process for untangling a mess this public and personal. What Kimberly showed, even in her messiest moments, was that you still get to decide what to keep and what to throw away after the storm. She didn't sign up for another heartbreak arc. She got one anyway. And if you're watching this, knowing what it's like to rebuild with only the pieces left behind, there's a weird comfort in seeing someone else stand back up. The internet memes about plot twists, but nobody laughs at the work it takes to stay upright. You ever notice how every strong woman's story circles around a loss, but rarely sits with how hope looks? For Kimberly, hope wasn't a rally cry. It was calling her sister to talk about anything except Wayne. It was picking a paint color for her new place without asking anyone's opinion. It was smiling back at herself in the mirror, knowing she deserved every bit of quiet she fought for. She learned the hard way that hope isn't trusting promises. It's trusting that you, yourself, will find peace even when somebody else brings chaos. Still, nobody can pretend the damage isn't real. Across DM threads and group chats, viewers kept asking each other, will she ever fully trust again? Or has the game changed too much, the threshold too high, the lessons too sharp to fade? Sometimes the biggest success isn't forgiving someone, but no longer needing revenge. The comments pile up. You go, girl. Never trust a grown man who hides his WhatsApp. Protect your peace at all costs. But fanatic support only goes so far. Late at night, someone like Kimberly has to answer tougher questions. Is the risk of love worth this kind of exposure? How do you find safe ground after you've fallen so hard, so many times, in front of the world? It's one thing to survive the cameras, it's another to outlast your own regrets. Fans love redemption, but the scary truth is, not every ending is a win wrapped up in a YouTube thumbnail. There are goodbyes that don't have a clean cut. Wayne might never explain what he was hiding, and Kimberly may never get the apologies she earned. Still, uncertainty doesn't have to be a monster. It can be space, a kind of freedom to write new chapters without fixing the last one first. She's done teaching grown men how to give basic respect, and she's done apologizing for trusting once more than she should. The new rules are simple. If someone costs you your peace, cut your losses sooner. Every day she sticks to that. She proves you don't need to win back the old plotline when you're staring down a future that finally belongs to you. Viewers call this the wildest breakup yet, but there's a reason people keep rewatching these episodes, discussing every deleted Instagram post, and analyzing each look between Wayne and Kimberly in the old footage. The audience isn't just nosy, they're looking for answers, for patterns, for a way to avoid their own disaster. There's real empathy in the way fans DM Kimberly about their own breakups, sharing stories like war wounds, trading advice and support. Maybe you recognized your own past in her story, the times you poured into someone else and ended up drained, or the relief when the silent suffering was finally over. Still, there's suspense in the air. Nobody knows what's next. Is Wayne still denying everything, or is there a new twist hiding in the police files? Will a secret whistleblower appear? Will Kimberly's next Instagram reel be about flowers and forgiveness, or will she keep the world guessing? This isn't the end of her story. It's just the part where the main character stops waiting for answers from everyone else and becomes her own solution. That scares people, especially those who expected her to fall apart again. Fans argue about what they would do in her shoes, but most can't imagine how exhausting it is to keep showing up after every betrayal. That's the part that stings. The way disappointment turns strong people into experts at licking their own wounds. Still, life moves forward. Kimberly started checking off small victories, running farther without stopping, making her house unmistakably hers, logging out of the headlines long enough to measure her worth without waiting for public applause. What she lost in Wayne, false security, maybe a comfortable lie, got traded for a version of herself that no longer asks, why me, but what do I want next? That's not a Hollywood ending, but it's the start of something with real teeth. Even as Wayne tries to rehab his image with tips about healthy boundaries on his semi-invisible podcast, nobody's buying it. His audience now is mostly trolls and skeptics, and every upload spawns a dozen new memes. The irony isn't lost on Kimberly or her fans. It's just another footnote, another reason to take your own advice before preaching to the world. Everyone's watching, waiting to see if Wayne's story gets any weirder. Maybe he'll announce a book deal or pop up on another franchise. Or maybe he finally disappears and the world moves on. Either way, Kimberly's future isn't chained to his mistakes anymore. So where does this all leave us? Knee-deep in an episode that started with a possible happy ending and finished with the cold edge of handcuffs and heartbreak. For the viewers, it's not just entertainment. It's a mirror and a warning. Love is brave, but it asks for accountability. Forgiveness is strong, but so is saying goodbye and never turning around. Which side of the story are you on? Would you stick around to fix broken trust? Or do you finally walk away when someone starts rewriting the rules? The questions linger. Can Kimberly ever risk opening up again? Or does every future connection get locked away behind suspicion? Does the shock of betrayal ever truly fade? Or does it show up in ways you don't expect years later, in the way you flinch at messages, or the way you overthink new feels? The cameras might be finished rolling, but the tension remains. Even if Kimberly manages to trust, will her audience ever trust her judgment? When reality blurs and everyone's an armchair relationship critic, what does proof look like? The most unforgettable moments in 90 Day Fiancé history aren't the wildest crimes or the ugliest fights, but the brutal honesty of owning your choices after the cameras cut. And let's not forget, the next episode promises even more chaos. Rumors are burning up the forums about another cast member with a sketchy record. There's talk of surprise reunions, breakups nobody saw coming, and one confrontation that could change the course of the entire franchise. If you thought Kimberly's saga was intense, just wait until the receipts drop in next week's showdown. The story isn't ending. It's evolving, and loyal fans know that behind every headline, there's always another secret waiting to shake up the piece. Think about it. What wild twist could land next? Will forgiveness win out? Or will the next big betrayal send someone else packing for good? The details aren't clear, and the stakes are higher than ever, but one thing's for sure. If you blink, you'll miss the next shockwave. You made it through the storm. Now catch your breath, because the next 90 Day Fiancé bombshell is right around the corner, and you'll want to see every shocking second before everyone else starts talking.